So if I come to the conclusion that I want to have a stake in the Bitcoin development because I start believing in it, what options do I have? How could I start?
Obviously, people can be divided in, do you see Bitcoin as an investment opportunity or a savings opportunity? This is, I think, the very essential. Before you think about asset allocation or before you even think about getting yourself on an exchange account onboarded, you have to think about, do I understand the core concepts and the core benefit of Bitcoin? You don't need to understand an auto engine to run a car, okay? But you need to understand the core concept of what is the steering wheel, how to shift gears, and how to refuel the tank and stuff like that. So where does this investment potentially bring you? What do you actually want to achieve? Is it a gain in fiat, or do you want to exit the fiat system? Do you want to actually bring in diversity in your portfolio? Yeah? So this is the very first fundamental question. No matter how your answer is, the next step could be that you buy that on an exchange or a specialized broker. Yeah?
If I'm not as far along and still think Bitcoin is a good investment, would buying an ETF be an option as well? Because there are some specialized financial products out there.
Or it really depends from which jurisdiction and if you're buying as a private investor or like a company. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's assume you're a German retail investor. Mm-hmm. It certainly doesn't make sense for you. Not only that you can't buy it from out of Germany, on the one hand side, it also doesn't make sense because you have no tax benefit from it. So when you buy Bitcoin out of Central Europe, you have specific regulation, and we are in Germany. We are very favored that we still have a Bitcoin which are tax-free after 1 year of holding period. Now, when does it make sense to buy an ETF? It only makes sense to buy an ETF when you're, for instance, a company. Because as a company, you don't have any way tax benefits. It gets tax-free after 1 year holding period. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you probably have an issue as a company to hold your Bitcoin yourself. Because then you have all these governance topics and which are solvable. So don't get me wrong. I'm not talking you out of self-custody when you're a company, but obviously it's much easier to just buy an ETF. And this doesn't mean that I'm recommending that. It is obviously just easier.
Yeah. Okay. And what would be the dangers if I decide to go for Bitcoin because that's the way I find appropriate for myself? Are there any cons or are there just pros?
Well, everything in life has pros and cons, right? And the downsides of a Bitcoin investment, for instance, when you're still measuring in fiat, you constantly check out the recent price, and many people struggle with the idea that their fiat measured investment is changing in value a lot. It's just a personal thing. Also, self-custody is quite challenging for very beginners. So you certainly have to invest, like, I would say, 2 hours as a complete beginner, maybe 3 hours of your valuable lifetime. Explore these topics, explore where to buy, and explore also how to self-custody your Bitcoin. This is obviously the downside. It's also work, but it's mandatory to think about how to store Bitcoin in a proper way.
Yeah. And there's a lot more respect because it's unknown. So actually, if you start digging into it, it's not as hard as you might think, right?
No, it's actually, even for non-technical guys, straightforward. Yeah, there are good explanations. There are good apps out there. We are not in the modem area of the internet anymore. Yeah, when you compare Bitcoin to the internet, we are still at the advanced cable or DSL area that you have some bandwidth. There's still some good used railroads and known ways to do that. A lot of explanation out there. Like we also do some parts of education here.
Which brings me to the next question, which is buying and holding Bitcoin. So you talked a little bit about the options, but can you describe how you actually, once you bought the Bitcoin on, for example, an exchange, where would you hold it? How does it actually work?
Okay.
Sounds mysterious, but
You as a private investor.
yes.
Mhm. So as a private investor, the most recommended form is to get it as on a price-efficient broker, which is specialized on Bitcoin, and then segue it to your own custody, which is, for instance, a hardware wallet. When in self-custody, you are always in two different areas, either in cold wallets or hot wallets.
Mhm.
When you would leave out the self-custody part, obviously there's third-party custody. For instance, when you leave your Bitcoin on the exchange, that's not self-custody. It's not recommended because when you not have access to your private key in Bitcoin, then it's considered not your Bitcoin. You don't hold the Bitcoin. It's not in the possession of Bitcoin, right? So it's important that you have the private key, and this is then called self-custody. So, and within self-custody, you have two options, either hot wallets or cold wallets. The hot wallets are called hot for the reason that they are connected on a device that has access to the internet, which is the case usually on desktop computers or your laptop or your mobile phone. Custodian means that a third party is securing your private keys, which sounds good, so that someone secures your private keys, but it's also bad at the same time because you don't have access or control. So it's a double-edged sword, and it's usually not recommended to do that. So it's actually the first time in history that you have the option to store your funds really, literally without any trusted middleman. So why would you introduce a trusted middleman like a custodian?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea behind the decentralized technology of decentralized money and scarce money, to hold them yourself. And then you have the cold wallets. And this is, I think, the most interesting part, because cold wallets, there's no direct connection to the internet. But that makes them, by definition, the most secure way to store your Bitcoin. Okay, and there are several variants. For instance, there's steel wallets where small steel plates are used to either store your private key or your seed phrase. There are paper wallets where you write down, either manually write down your private key or seed phrase. All options are available, but typically the most easy and most important way is that you just write down your 12 or 24 words in your seed phrase, write them on a paper, and that's it. You derive your private keys from that. And the most convenient, in my opinion, at least the most convenient way of using that, the cold storage, is with hardware wallets. And I've brought some hardware wallets here with me. We call all three major manufacturers at the same time. So there's a Ledger, there's a Bitbox O2, and there's also Trezor. They range between 70 euro and 150 euro, depending on the specifics. And these devices work with, probably you can see that in the camera, but there's a specific display, which is right now not showing anything, but this display will help you not only to set up and same of course with the Bitbox. So here's a display illuminated then when it's running, and it's not only helping you setting it up for like storing your coins and ramping up in your wallet, but at the same time, and this is the important part, whenever you do a transaction, you see the destination amount and the destination address on the display. And it's of utmost importance that you compare this target address, like literally the whole address, compare it digit by digit with your intended target address, because only then it can't be manipulated. The reason for that is very simple, because both devices have a hardware module inside, which is a crypto module. It's called, for the Bitbox O2, it's an open source crypto module, which is per definition a bit safer than a proprietary crypto module like in the Ledger. This is a ledger X, by the way. There's an S variant, which is a bit smaller and a bit more affordable at the same time. Only then you confirm this transaction on the crypto module is activated, your private keys are extracted, but never extracted to your device. Yeah, only it is extracted to sign the transaction. The crypto module signs it, but the keys never leave the crypto module per se. So it's air-gapped from your device, may it be a computer, laptop, mobile phone. So the first security measure is you have to activate the stick with your PIN that you define during setup, and even then you always have your backup. So even if you lose the wallets during a fire or an accident, you still have your backup, which is should be in a fire safe tresor. The backup is usually these 25 word seed phrase written on a small piece of paper. If you don't have a fireplace safe, there are special steel wallets, as mentioned. They usually are fire safe, of course. Yeah, so that's the best way to secure them. Obviously, it's not. Some of them have Lightning integrations, but it's not usual because the idea is to have a long-term storage. It's not something you immediately pop out and pay in the supermarket with it. That's not the purpose. If you want to do that, you simply use a Lightning mobile app, like a Bitcoin Lightning Ready mobile app. There are several of it. Some of them are custodial. The most known ones, like Wallet of Satoshi, for instance, they are custodial, but not too bad for beginners. We're talking about like your $50 or $100, like a reasonable amount that you would carry with you in fiat currency in your wallet per se, right? It makes sense to have that in a custodial setup. Even if the custody provider is experienced a security incident like FTX did or Mt. Gox did in the past, then it's not the case. So your vast majority of Bitcoin is then secured on these type of devices. But there are other ways. You don't have to purchase these hardware wallets. They are quite affordable, in my opinion, starting from like €70. It shouldn't be against. But if you say, okay, my stack is too small to even invest these $70, then you typically have other options, like I said before.
Yeah. If I decide to buy a Bitcoin on a little bit larger scale, do you think it would make sense to distribute the Bitcoin on several wallets, on several hardware wallets, or something else?
Mm-hmm. So actually, the short answer is yes. It makes sense to distribute them amongst the sources and the purposes. Technically, you could argue it doesn't make too much change.
Relevant? Sorry, just why you say that?
Yeah. So you can say everything is pooled in one wallet and in one public key. You can do that, of course.
And the public key is what everybody can see, right?
Everyone can see and verify. And of course, for privacy reasons, usually wallets are creating a new public key underlying your specific master public key, which is very useful for privacy reasons. So you not necessarily know immediately what will be the underlying target. So you have a bit of privacy there as well, but it's not an anonymous transaction. Okay, you simply have another deposit address, which helps, and you can use another address and create like hundreds, thousands addresses underneath your Bitcoin master public key, which is helpful. And you can use obviously several hardware wallets, and on one hardware wallet you can create several wallets within this hardware wallet. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessary. You can keep it very simple. Everything is pooled in one wallet under one public key if you want to. It might make sense to separate funds for some privacy reasons, mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily the case.
And do you see any developments in that area to make it even more user-friendly, or do you see that as the final solution?
A lot. So it became former times when checking out Bitcoin 2012, it was very hard to actually buy Bitcoin and even harder to store that. This is also why many people use the Bitcoin Core wallet, which was from the software. The Bitcoin software itself, they just installed software. Probably they mined some Bitcoin along the way in the very beginning, even with their standard computers. And then they somehow lost the computer, lost the hard drives, etc. All these stories are well known. And they simply just used the Bitcoin software, and then it was not securely stored. The question was, what is increasing, and do we see a better infrastructure? And the answer is yes, because we have, for instance, a lot of apps, mobile apps. I don't say some names, particular names, but what I've seen during the last couple of years, that these apps were really on point by now. They really help you acquiring Bitcoin, really help to establish a self-custody setup for you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you want to use a hardware wallet on top of it, quite easy. So it is not too complicated. You can learn that in like 2 hours, 3 hours maybe.
Yes, it's more the mysterious part than the actual difficulty, right?
And exactly. And if you know what you're doing, buying a hardware wallet, setting that up, acquiring Bitcoin is a process of like 20, 30 minutes.
Cool. So that's really encouraging. So we actually have a wallet and we decide to buy Bitcoin and we store it. And what do I need to be prepared for on this journey once I've done that? What do you think? What kind of mindset someone needs when they decide to buy Bitcoin and to be part of this journey and have a stake?
Oh, Bitcoin is for any mindset, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, well, it may be the case that your mindset might change through certain aspects of Bitcoin itself, but Bitcoin doesn't mind your mindset, right?
Right. You don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you.
Yes. This is what many Bitcoiners say, yeah, actually. And often it's the case.
Is there anything else which wasn't mentioned? Yeah, which comes with the new responsibilities of self-custody and decentralization of Bitcoin? Or is there anything else I need to think through before I start buying and holding Bitcoin? Or was that it?
Yeah, so you could argue you must be really aware of this responsibility. So the first time in history you are actually able to cut out any middleman, preventing your access to your own money or own funds, like banks or custodians. So that's the first time in history you have a digital currency or digital asset that actually is able to be hold on your own. But this comes obviously with the responsibility that you secure your private key in a very secure manner. And if you lose your private key and if you also lose your backup, then you don't have access to your Bitcoin anymore, right? And this must be 100% clear. So with these type of power, there's responsibility connected, right? And this is also the aspect of like the self-sovereignty. If you want to be self-sovereign, obviously this comes at a price, and the price is that you get in the driver's seat, that you take responsibility and ownership of it. This is like a good price, but for some people, this concept is scary because they think about, I can't call no one to reset my password. I have no banking app, no banking clerk to call when something went wrong, and this is probably some of the mindset questions you wanted to hear before, right? So,
well, it's just I need to take care of everything in the now common system. Someone else is responsible for. So if I want to transfer the funds to my daughter because I'm not feeling well anymore and stuff like that, so I need to think this through beforehand, right?
Exactly.
Because at the moment something's happening to me, I can't do it anymore. Nobody else can. If I haven't established some system before.
100%. Yeah. So you have to become a grown-up, and you're not in this process of like a guided financial system anymore, but you yourself are responsible for your holdings, and no one else can take them away. You can't be censored. They can't be taken away. at least not technically.